There are things money can't buy, and one of them is the sound of a scream that never came back. It was supposed to be just another quiet Sunday at the Vasconcelos mansion. Heated pool, smell of meat on the grill, lazy laughter, and full glasses. But what was supposed to be a barbecue turned into a search. What was laughter became echo. "Where's Lucas?" asked the mother, for the third time already, adjusting her white blouse with a trembling hand. No one answered. The father, Mauricio Vasconcelos, a millionaire in the cosmetics industry, froze in time. The fork fell onto the plate. The world seemed to stop at the exact moment they realized the child, only 6 years old, had disappeared. Disappeared inside a gated community with 12 cameras, guards at the gate, and an electric fence capable of shocking even curious birds. Impossible. This is impossible, Mauricio kept repeating, as if talking to himself. But the impossible likes to appear when you least expect it. Minutes turned into hours, hours into panic. The sun went down without leaving a trace, and with it disappeared. The hope of an ordinary Sunday. They called the police. Tracker dogs, helicopter. Even the retired colonel neighbor showed up with a flashlight and an air of knowing. More than he said, but nothing. No clues. No sandal. No sound. No ransom note. Lucas' disappearance became a mystery, and mystery, when it involves a child, weighs differently. Mauricio locked himself in his room at the end of the night, grew a beard, abandoned meetings, stopped sleeping. The company collapsed. Let it collapse. His fortune dwindle. Let it dwindle. The world could fall apart as long as they gave him back his son. And in that silence of a bleeding father, something stirred, a clue, a lead, or maybe just fate playing detective. But that we'll discover in the next chapter. They say that when life screams, the heart listens. But when silence lasts too long, even despair starts to whisper. 3 days after Lucas' disappearance, as the mansion turned into a police operations center, with more uniforms than a parade, Mauricio Vasconcelos received an envelope. Simple, crumpled, thrown under the iron gate. No sender, no stamp, just a piece of paper inside, and a phrase written in twisted handwriting in smudged ink. What money can't see, time reveals, and an address, Rua dos Pescadores, 178. Back, Mauricio stared at it like one stares at a sentence. It could be a joke, a trap, a setup. But when a soul is hanging by a thread, any knot feels like salvation. He went alone. No police, no bodyguard. Just him, the car key, and a fear-beating heart in his chest. When he arrived, he found something no thriller movie would dare to script. A narrow alley, surrounded by crumbling buildings. Smell of rancid oil and the distant sound of a sad certain age song playing on the radio. At the back, a small rotted wooden door with the number 178 painted in white correction fluid. He knocked once, twice, 3 times. "Is anyone there?" His voice came out lower than expected. Nothing. But before he could knock a 4th time, the door opened on its own, and a man stepped out. Dirty, thin, a worn out hat covered half his face. "You came," said the man, as if he knew he would. Mauricio took a step back, suspicious. "Who are you? What do you know about my son?" The man smiled, a crooked smile, the kind that hides more pain than teeth. "Not everything that's lost has been stolen. Sometimes it hides just to protect itself." That phrase hit Mauricio like a mother's slap, not violent, but burning with truth. The man held out his hand. In it, a small rusty object, but recognizable, the pendant Lucas wore around his neck, a small silver angel, a gift from his grandmother, which he never took off. Mauricio trembled. His legs weakened. The ground seemed to want to swallow everything. "Where is he?" he shouted, his voice shattered by anguish. The man simply said, "To find your son, you'll have to go back to the place you swore never to return to." And with that, he closed the door. Silence. Mauricio stood there, frozen, the pendant burning in the palm of his hand, not knowing whether to cry, run, or call someone. The address from the past awaited him, and with it, wounds that never truly heal. Yes, there are places that smell worse on the inside than on the outside, and sometimes, to find what you've lost, you have to return to where you swore never to set foot again. The luxury car rolled down the dirt path as if it didn't belong there. Tires too thin for that thick mud, suspension too delicate for the reality hiding behind the bushes. Mauricio Vasconcelos, the man who had a helicopter just to skip airport lines, now found himself swaying inside an Audi that seemed to shrink under the weight of fear. The GPS no longer recognized the area. And maybe it was better that way, because this place was not just geographical, it was emotional. Here lived the past. More precisely, his mother. Yes, the woman he hadn't seen in over 20 years. The very one he left behind when he decided to climb the social ladder. When he swore he'd never again be the maid's son, as his university classmates mocked. The woman who raised him alone, cleaning floors and ironing the clothes of rich ladies, now lived in a wooden shack with a broken window and a bent fence. He parked the car and just sat there, still, engine off, heart screaming. "You're ridiculous, Mauricio," he murmured to himself, looking in the rearview mirror. 20 years without facing her, and now you want to knock on her door and ask for help. But he got out, in a suit, shoes caked in mud, and eyes lost. The door was ajar, and from inside, a raspy voice came, one he would have recognized even in the dark. "If you're a government worker, you can leave. But if you're an ungrateful son, the door is open." Silence. He stepped in. The house was small, smelling of stale coffee and damp wood. A radio tuned to the AM reported daily tragedies with the bored tone of someone who's seen it all. In a corner, a patched armchair, and in it, her, Dona Aurea, smaller than he remembered, frailer, but with the same gaze that shattered all excuses. "Hello, Mom," he said, barely audible. She didn't stand. "I'm not the mother of a stranger. My son doesn't forget where he came from. My son doesn't become a statistic of egocentrics." Mauricio tried to approach. She raised her hand, a simple gesture, but as sharp as a gunshot. "Forgive me," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I didn't come for me. I came for Lucas." She watched him. For a few seconds that felt like forever. "The child's gone, isn't he?" He nodded. "Do you know something?" She got up with difficulty, walked to an old wardrobe, pulled out an envelope. Inside, a photo. Lucas, in a place Mauricio didn't recognize. He was smiling, but behind him, a symbol painted on a wall. Mauricio's eyes widened. That's from the Sao Sebastião shelter, the orphanage you hated so much, the one where we left your brother." Mauricio froze. "My brother died at birth, Mom." She gently closed the envelope. "No, Mauricio. He lived. He was taken. You had a brother. And maybe he's the one who knows now where your son is." Time stopped. The air vanished. A lost brother, a missing son, and fate tying it all together with a knot no one wanted to untangle. They say fate writes straight with crooked lines, but in this case, the paper was torn and the pen out of ink. Mauricio was driving like someone trying to escape from himself. The car moved down the dirt road while the sun hid behind clouds heavy as suitcases full of truth. The rusty sign appeared like a whisper amid the brush. Sao Sebastião shelter. Since 1962. He stopped, took a deep breath, and thought, how could I have ignored this? How could my mother have hidden a brother from me all my life? But a part of him already knew the answer. He had never wanted to know. The truth only shows itself to those brave enough to ask the right questions. He got out of the car. The gate was half open, creaking in the wind. Inside, the old building exhaled the scent of abandoned childhood, peeling paint, broken toys in a dirt yard. A silence that seemed to have a voice of its own. A thin woman appeared on the porch. She had the face of someone who's seen more pain than a Mexican soap opera. "Hello, can I help you? I'm Mauricio Vasconcelos. I need to know if, at any time, a child named Rafael stayed here. He'd be in his 30s today. My mother left him here." She froze for a moment, as if that name came from far, far away. "Rafael Vasconcelos?" He nodded. "Wait here." She walked back in slowly, as if the past weighed down her steps. Meanwhile, Mauricio walked over to a rusty swing. The chains made a sharp, almost sorrowful sound. He sat on the concrete bench in the garden and waited. A few minutes later, the woman returned with a cardboard folder. She opened it slowly. Old documents, black and white photos, handwritten. "Forms, here," she said, pointing to a file. "Rafael Vasconcelos. Left at 2 days old. Mother's name, Aurea D. Silva Vasconcelos." Mauricio rubbed his eyes. It was real. He had a brother. And where's he now? The woman hesitated. Rafael was different, quiet, but with a huge heart. At 16, he left to live on the streets. He would come back sometimes. He never wanted a permanent home, never accepted help. He said he'd help those in need, because he knew what it was like to have no one. Mauricio felt his chest tighten. And does he still live around here? The woman looked at the floor. No one knows, but there's a man, known as the Guardian. He lives in the alleys north of the city, helping children. They say he's a street angel. He never wanted recognition. He only appears when a child disappears or suffers, and every time he appears, he vanishes again. Mauricio swallowed hard. This Guardian, could he be Raphael? She looked at him simply and answered with another question. If he is, will you recognize him as your brother, or will you turn your back on him again? Silence answered for him. Outside, the wind blew hard. A kite cut through the gray sky, as if to announce that the reunion was closer than it seemed. But what Mauricio didn't know yet was that the past always makes you pay dearly for the decisions you bury. There are things that can't be seen on a DNA test, but they show in the eyes, in the gestures, in the way someone touches the world with their fingertips. Mauricio Vasconcelos, the man who once walked red carpets and appeared on magazine covers, now walked with his head down in one of the city's most forgotten neighborhoods. Cracked sidewalks, the smell of reheated food, broken streetlights, and people in a hurry to survive. Here, no one recognized him, and if they did, no one cared. Because in this part of the world, money isn't a currency, it's just a distance. He asked around about the Guardian. Some laughed, others looked away. But an old lady selling corn on the corner stared into his eyes and said, if he wants to be found, he'll appear, but only if your heart is pure. Mauricio wanted to respond, but swallowed hard, because deep down, he knew there were still stains of pride dirtying what little humility he had left. They gave way tonight, and he sat on a concrete bench between bags and market scraps. He was about to give up when he heard it, a child crying. He turned his head. He saw a boy, torn shirt, scraped knee, trying to lift his little sister, who seemed unconscious. No one around, no one to help. Mauricio approached, knelt beside him. What happened, son? The boy opened his wide eyes. She's sick, and we have no one. Before Mauricio could do anything, a shadow appeared behind him. Firm steps, a soft voice, but full of urgency. I'll take care of it. It was him. Tall, thin, unshaven beard, and an old backpack on his shoulder. He picked up the little girl as if he were carrying the entire world. The boy recognized him instantly. That's him, Uncle, the man who always helps us. Mauricio froze. That voice, that way of looking at the child, that way of holding without fear. Raphael, he whispered. The man turned his face, looked him straight in the eye, and for the first time in years, Mauricio felt like he was facing a broken mirror. You took your time, but you came. Are you my brother? Raphael didn't answer with words. He simply took a small chain from his pocket, identical to the one Mauricio wore in childhood, the one he lost in a fire, but with one difference. On the back, an engraving handwritten, Lucas, the world stopped. You found my son. Raphael nodded, but his gaze darkened. I found him, but I wasn't the only one. What do you mean? There are people who don't want him to come back. People afraid of what Lucas saw. Mauricio felt his blood freeze. What did he see? Raphael. His brother sighed, lifting his eyes to the cloud-covered sky. The truth, and the truth, is scarier than darkness. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and there, between two brothers who didn't even know how to embrace, began the start of a silent war, a battle against something much greater than a missing child. It's easy to call someone crazy when they say what no one wants to hear. The hard part is looking in the mirror after the mask falls. Mauricio and Raphael walked through a narrow alley lit only by a flickering lamppost. The little girl had already been taken by a volunteer friend of Raphael, and now the two brothers walked side by side, as if life were trying to stitch together a bond that had been broken before it was born. Who are these people? Raphael, why would someone hide my son? Asked Mauricio, his voice trembling. Raphael glanced sideways, a mix of sorrow and irony. You lived surrounded by cameras, guards, contracts, and you never saw what was happening inside your own company. What? Raphael stopped in front of a tagged iron gate. He knocked twice. A peephole opened. A suspicious face. Then the door creaked open. Inside, an old warehouse turned. into a makeshift shelter, mattresses on the floor, children sleeping in hammocks, teens cooking, patched up bags, a parallel world inside the city. Your son saw something he shouldn't have. They told him to stay quiet, but he didn't, and that's when he disappeared. Mauricio sat on a crate, in disbelief. What are you talking about? Raphael threw an envelope on the table. Inside, photos. Photos of a clandestine lab. Bottles of cosmetic products with fake labels. Small children packing merchandise. And in the corner of one blurry image, the Vasconcelos Cosmeticos logo. Mauricio turned pale. This is fake. You want it to be. But it isn't. Raphael said calmly, but firmly, you left the company in the hands of greedy men. Executives who turned the factory into a machine that crushes the innocent. Mauricio shook his head. No, that's not possible. Lucas saw it. He went in there with a school friend, by accident. They were playing, entered the back warehouse. They saw how children were being used. They tried to tell someone. One of the guards caught them. The friend managed to escape. Lucas didn't. Why didn't they tell me anything? Why wasn't there a ransom? Raphael approached, his gaze firm. Because this isn't a kidnapping. It's an attempt to cover it up. If you made noise, the whole story would explode, and many powerful people would fall with you. People still using your name. Mauricio felt the ground slip from under his feet. His hands trembled. He struggled to breathe. But where is he now? Raphael, please, where's my son? His brother hesitated, looked toward the back of the shelter, and nodded his chin. He's closer than you imagine. But if you really want to see him, you must promise something. Anything you want. You'll have to destroy your own empire to save the one you love most. A lightning bolt split the sky outside, and at that moment, Mauricio understood. It wasn't just about finding Lucas. It was also about finding himself, but the price might be everything he had ever built. There are embraces that need no rehearsal. There are reunions that don't need explanation. They just happen, because the soul was already missing them. The rain began gently, almost shyly, as if afraid to ruin the moment. Mauricio followed Raphael down a narrow hallway inside the shelter. The sound of raindrops on the tin roof marked each step like the drumbeat of fate. At the end, a chipped blue door, and behind it, silence. Is he in there? Whispered Mauricio, his hand on the doorknob. Raphael nodded. But don't expect a celebration. He's been through a lot. He's scared, suspicious, and he has every right to be. Mauricio took a deep breath. He turned the knob. The room was simple. A mattress in one corner, a flashlight hanging from the wall, and makeshift toys on the floor. In the center, a boy with messy hair, pale skin, and hollow eyes. He was facing away, drawing with colored pencils in an old notebook. Mauricio stepped in softly, his heart pounding in his throat. Lucas. The boy slowly turned his face. 1 second passed. To die until the eyes recognized. Dad. That word, weak and trembling, struck Mauricio's chest like lightning. He dropped to his knees. Tears came before the words. My God, my son, you're alive. Lucas didn't cry. He didn't run either. He remained still, as if fear still clutched him from within. They said you abandoned me, that you knew everything and left me. Mauricio shook his head, desperate. Never, my son. I knew nothing. Forgive me for not protecting you. Forgive me for everything. Lucas hugged the notebook to his chest. They hit the kids, said it was normal, said it was work. But there was a man who hid me, who fed me. He called me Little Lightning. He said I was strong. Mauricio looked at Raphael. Raphael stared at the floor. It was him, wasn't it? Lucas nodded toward him. Mauricio nodded. That's your uncle, son, my brother, and maybe the angel we didn't deserve. Lucas stood up slowly, walked over to Raphael, looked at him for a few seconds, and embraced him, without saying a word, and Mauricio, on his knees, watched that embrace happen and understood something that hurt more than a slap. There was someone who, having nothing, had done for his son what he, having everything, hadn't known how to do. There, in that modest room, 3 broken worlds touched for the first time. And outside, thunder roared, as if warning, now the real storm begins. Some think the worst is discovering the truth, but it's not. The worst is realizing you were part of the lie. After that reunion worthy of an old movie scene, Mauricio thought things would calm down, that he could take his son, disappear with him on a private jet, and forget everything. But the problem with conscience is, once it wakes up, it doesn't fall back asleep. The next morning, Raphael called him to the back of the shelter. They sat on the crates under a gray sky, with the smell of burnt porridge coming from the communal kitchen. "Do you want justice or revenge?" asked Raphael bluntly. "I want to protect my son." "Then you'll have to cut down the very tree they used to tie the rope." Raphael opened an old folder. Inside, documents, evidence, receipts, secret recordings, even an audio of one of the Vasconcelos Cosmetics directors talking about streamlining production using miners. All of it linked the company, which still bore Mauricio's name, to an exploitation network involving local politicians, fake NGOs, and even bought-out police. "This will destroy everything," whispered Mauricio, pale. "Yes, but it's the only way to save anything." Mauricio looked at the pages as if they were dynamite. "And how do we make it public?" "The media won't publish it. They're compromised. And the police, let's not even talk about them." Raphael pulled a USB stick from his pocket. "There's a channel, an independent journalist." His soul trembles, but his liver is strong. "If this video comes out, the silence ends." Mauricio hesitated. The world he knew was collapsing too fast. But then, he remembered the drawing Lucas had shown him the night before. The child had drawn a man with a flashlight, surrounded by children in darkness. "That's you, Dad," he had said, eyes full of tears. "You're going to bring us out of the shadows?" Those words echoed inside him, like a prayer, like a debt. That same afternoon, Mauricio appeared at the former Vasconcelos Cosmetics building. Wrinkled suit, determined look. He entered the meeting room where executives were discussing numbers, and threw the documents on the table. "Either you all resign now, or tomorrow this company will be the center of an international scandal. Have you lost your mind, Mauricio? You're going to destroy your own name." "My name I can rebuild. What I can't do is keep signing contracts with the devil while pretending to sell perfume." One of the directors stood up, outraged. "You're going to ruin everything." Mauricio stepped forward. "It's already ruined, my friend. The difference is now it's going to stink in public." He left the room with the dignity of someone who has nothing left to lose, and for that reason can finally win what matters. That same evening, the video was published. Red headlines, shocking images, and the journalist's final sentence: "An empire built on the exploitation of the innocent, and a father who, by losing his son, found the truth." The video went viral. The country stopped. Justice began to move, and many wealthy people began to tremble. But this was just the beginning. Some people rise so high in life, they forget where the ground is. But the ground has memory, and when it calls, you return on your knees. 2 days after the report aired, the Vasconcelos mansion, once adorned with marble columns and guarded by armed security, became a tourist spot for the curious, and an improvised rallying point for public outrage, placards, shouts, clanging pots, and the most painful, children, many of them, holding up photos of their own siblings who had disappeared. In recent years, all of them, in one way or another, linked to that damned exploitation network. Mauricio was no longer there. While the former director's lawyers tried to salvage what remained of the company's public image, he had returned to the shelter, surrounded by children, real ones, no makeup, no spotlights. "You don't have to do this," said Raphael, seeing him scrubbing toilets with a brush. "Yes, I do. The hands that built this must learn to rebuild this." He scrubbed like someone begging forgiveness with each stroke, not because he was forced, but because it was necessary. Outside, journalists gathered. They wanted an interview, an exclusive, a headline. But Mauricio refused them all. "If you want to talk to me, come with a bucket and soap around here. We only talk to those who put their hands in the wound." Lucas watched everything from a distance, still withdrawn, but with a more alive gaze. And in this new routine, where luxury had been replaced by cracked concrete and watery soup, father and son truly began to know each other. Lucas taught his father how to hang laundry. Mauricio taught his son how to build a cardboard model. Raphael watched and smiled quietly, but peace did not last. On a heavy night, with the smell of rain in the air, someone threw a rock into the shelter. It shattered the kitchen window. With the rock, a message: "You went after powerful people. If you keep going, You'll bury more than documents. Mauricio picked up the rock, read the phrase, and handed it to Raphael. They're not going to stop, are they? Raphael shook his head. Those who profit from fear can't stand seeing someone lose it. So Mauricio did what no one expected. He called a press conference in the shelter itself, with the children around him, and there, in front of cameras and microphones, in a worn-out suit and with a firm gaze, he declared, "If you touch any of these children, you'll have to go through me. I'm no longer CEO of any filth, but I'm a father and a brother and now a shield. You can crush my face, my bank account, my past, but don't touch these little hands again." Silence. Then, applause, and amid all the noise, a tear rolled down Lucas' face. For the first time, he believed in the man he called Dad, but the enemies were closer than anyone thought. Asterisk, there are names heavier than gold, but sometimes it's better to spit on your crest than to sleep embraced by shame. The day after the press conference, Mauricio received an unexpected visit. A black car arrived, no front license plate, tinted windows, and an engine growling like an angry beast. Out stepped a man in a suit, tall, with that look that sizes people up like meat in a butcher shop. "Dr. Mauricio Vasconcelos," he said in a dry tone, not removing his sunglasses. "That's not me anymore. Now I'm just Mauricio," he replied, arms crossed. "I'm afraid it's not that simple." The man handed him a folder. Inside, documents, a legal notice, a lawsuit filed by the former partners of Vasconcelos COSME AQTICOS. Charges: defamation, industrial sabotage, disclosure of trade secrets, large-scale financial damage. They're suing me for telling the truth. They demand that you immediately stop your accusations, remove the videos, and publicly retract. Otherwise, you'll lose all rights to family assets, including your mother's inheritance. Mauricio gave a crooked smile. Inheritance? They think there's anything left after I gave it all up. The mansion is still in Dona Area's name, and if you sign this retraction document, they offer to restore everything. Even the company name will bear yours again. A triumphant comeback. Dr. Mauricio, all will be forgiven. You just have to say you were emotionally unstable and that you made a mistake. Mauricio calmly closed the folder. He looked at the man like someone staring into a bottomless well. "And if I don't sign, they'll bury you in court, in the media, wherever necessary, and they'll shut down the children's shelter because we found out the land is irregular. They have already initiated eviction proceedings. The threat wasn't veiled. It was raw." Mauricio walked to the shelter door. From there, he saw Raphael playing with two little girls, teaching them to draw stars with colorful chalk. Lucas was laughing with a stray dog that had become the shelter's mascot, and in a corner, a sign painted by one of the girls. "Here, we don't pretend to love." He took a deep breath, returned inside. "Tell your bosses that if they want the house, they can have it. If they want to erase my name, let them. But this place," he placed his hand on his chest, "there's no deed in the world that can buy it." The man gathered the papers, irritated. "You'll regret this, maybe, but not as much as I've regretted ignoring my own blood for 20 years. The black car drove away, spitting smoke. That night, Raphael appeared at the bedroom door, eyes down. "Are you really going to lose everything? I already lost it, Raphael, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me." He handed his brother a document. It was the deed to the shelter's land, officially donated to a new foundation, Lucas Institute, for a free childhood. If they want to take this away, they'll have to take down a new name, a name we rebuilt with the truth. Raphael hugged him, tight, for the first time, like true brothers. But meanwhile, at the other end of the city, a mysterious figure spoke on the phone, from the rooftop of a mirrored building. "He won't stop. We'll have to play our last card on the other end of the line." A cold voice replied, "Then take what he has left. Take the child." And darkness began to lurk again. There are threats that come with the dark, but there is a courage born from pain. And when that courage grows, even hell can't stop it. That night, heavy and hot, under a sky thick with clouds and a silence stretched like breath held to long, Raphael was the first to feel it. The dog, that mutt who roamed freely through the shelter, suddenly began to bark, and it wasn't playful barking. It was an alert, the kind the elders called the cry of the soul sensing danger. Raphael got out of his hammock, slipped on his sandals, grabbed his flashlight. "Is someone there?" he shouted, walking toward the back. Nothing. Until he saw it. A shadow. To 3 men in masks. Silent, like ghosts for hire. One held what looked like a cloth. Another, bolt cutters. And the third, a weapon. Raphael's blood ran cold. He ran toward the dormitory. Lucas was sleeping peacefully, curled up on the bunk bed, holding tight to an old pillow that smelled of soap. Raphael scooped him into his arms. He didn't think. He acted. Mauricio, they came for Lucas, he shouted, bursting through his brother's makeshift door. Mauricio leapt from bed, barefoot, confused. Who? What? But the sounds were already there. A snap, a chain breaking, the back gate giving way. Raphael locked the door from the inside, pushed a dresser in front of it. They won't take him, not as long as I'm breathing. Lucas woke up, terrified. Dad? Uncle? Mauricio knelt, holding his son's face. Listen to me, son. Daddy's here. Everything will be fine. Close your eyes. Trust our voices. Outside, low voices. Busted down. He's in there. Raphael ran to the kitchen, returned. With an old lumber machete. I'll hold them off. You take the boy out the side exit. Are you crazy? I'm not leaving you. You already left me once. But now, you have the chance to do it differently. Mauricio froze. Tears welled up. Raphael smiled. A sad smile. Go, brother. Let me be the shield I always wanted to be. The door shook. One kick. Two. The barrier was already starting to give. Mauricio grabbed Lucas in his arms and ran to the back. They exited through a hole in the wall the children had once made to escape when the shelter got. The heavy in the darkness, he ran like mad. His son clutched tightly to his chest. He wasn't just running from the threat. He was running from guilt, from the past, from cowardice. Reaching a busier street, he cried out for help. He shouted with all his soul. A neighbor woke up, called the police. Others approached. Mauricio, on his knees, held his son tightly, trembling. They were going to take you. They were going to erase you, my son. Lucas cried softly, but you didn't let them. A few minutes later, sirens, police, yelling. But Raphael had stayed behind, and no one yet knew if he had managed to resist, or if he had been taken with the silence. Some people become heroes in the headlines, not Raphael. Raphael became a hero in the dark, without a single front page, without applause on the back, just raw courage and wounds. When the police arrived at the shelter, the scene looked like a battlefield. Door kicked in, dry blood on the floor, a machete tossed in a corner, and signs of struggle everywhere. But Raphael was no longer there. He had vanished. Evaporated. No trace, no fingerprints, no witness. Mauricio spent entire days on site, without eating, without sleeping. He paced in circles, asking the children what they saw, if anyone heard anything. But the answer was always the same. Uncle Raphael fought the men. After that, silence. The press tried to turn the story into a spectacle. Headline after headline. Ex-billionaire accused of staging his own tragedy, mysterious disappearance. In a children's shelter, was it all a setup? Mauricio answered none of them. Instead, he went to the police station. He demanded an investigation. He delivered the documents Raphael had gathered, the evidence of the criminal network, the names of those involved. And there, in front of prosecutors and investigators, he threw everything on the table. Arrest whoever you must, even if it's me, but bring me back my brother. That same day, a young journalist, a rookie, unafraid of losing his job, decided to follow the leads everyone else ignored. He reviewed the area's surveillance cameras. He spoke to the homeless, those people no one listens to, but who see everything done. And he found out Raphael had been taken away in a black car, without plates. Witnesses swore he was injured, but conscious, and that he had been seen transferred to a clinic. One of those where you never know if they heal or disappear you. Mauricio went there. He faced the guards. He demanded to enter. We have no one by that name here, sir, replied the director, with a chilling voice. But at the end of the hallway, a cleaning lady whispered, the bearded man. He's in room 23, but they don't let anyone see him. Mauricio forced his way in. Room 23, and there, lying down, eyes swollen shut, lips bruised, ribs marked, was Raphael. He was breathing, but unconscious, sedated, tied to the bed like a criminal. Mauricio cried in silence. He took his brother's hand and whispered, "You saved my son. Now it's my turn to save you." The nurse tried to stop him. He shoved her aside. He unlocked the cuffs. He lifted his brother into his arms, just as Raphael had carried Lucas days earlier. "We're going home, my brother." And he walked out, carrying that battered body, as if carrying his own past. Outside, flashes, journalists, screams. Mauricio stopped. He looked at the crowd. "This man here is the real hero. His name is Rafael Vasconcelos. And if anyone doubts that, come look him in the eye." Silence, then timid applause, shouts of support. And a child's voice cried out, "Thank you, Uncle Rafa." It was there, on the sidewalk, with Raphael in his arms and Lucas holding his hand, that Mauricio understood the name Vasconcelos only meant something now, because finally someone had given their life for it. There are places that were once prisons and with courage become havens. There are those who lose what they built just to discover what they never had. The weeks after Raphael's rescue, what was once dust and fear had transformed into bricks, fresh paint, and a promise of future. The former Vasconcelos Cosméticos factory, where so many injustices had taken place, was officially seized by court order, and thanks to the direct action of Mauricio, now back in the media, not as a millionaire, but as a whistleblower and activist, the place was turned into an ambitious project: Bridge of Life Foundation, school, shelter, art workshops, free psychological and medical support for street children, and atop the building, a sign with a new name, written in the same golden letters that once advertised luxury perfumes: Rafael Vasconcelos Center for Child Protection. On Inauguration Day, hundreds gathered: children, former Silence employees, mothers, volunteers, local residents. Rafael was still recovering, seated in a wheelchair, his arm in a cast, bandage on his face, watching everything in silence, his eyes shining. Beside him, Lucas, proud, and on the other side, Mauricio, in simple clothes, sleeves rolled up, hands hardened by work. He stepped onto a wooden crate, improvised as a podium. He grabbed the microphone with the same firmness he once used to sign contracts. "I spent my life trying to climb, and along the way, I forgot who was pushing me from below. I forgot my mother, my brother, my name, and what it could mean." Silence. No one coughed. No one moved. Lucas, my son, taught me more in 3 weeks than I learned in 30 years of college. And Raphael, well, Raphael isn't just my brother. He's the name that now gives shelter to this building. Because when everything collapsed, he held up what really mattered. He turned to his brother. "Rafa, thank you for being a father to my son, for being light where I only saw profit." Raphael tried to laugh, but the pain was still visible. He took the mic with his free hand. "I never wanted to see my name on a building. I just wanted no child to go through what we did. And now, if this building is a haven, then it's worth more than any title." Lucas stepped forward. He hugged them both. It was the first three-way embrace, and in that moment, no fortune in the world could buy what they were building together. The audience gave a standing ovation. Some cried, others looked at each other as if recognizing themselves, because everyone there, at some point in life, had been Lucas or Raphael or even Mauricio, and what had started with the disappearance of a child was now a seed, so that no child would ever be forgotten again. But Tom still had one last surprise in store. Asterisk, there are words that heal more than medicine, and there are letters that arrive when the heart is ready to read them. 3 months had passed since the inauguration of the foundation. Raphael was slowly recovering. Lucas now slept without nightmares, and Mauricio had traded meetings for weekly discussion circles with children and teens. But what he didn't expect to receive was an envelope with no sender, slipped under the door at dawn. Inside, a folded sheet of paper and a handwritten note for the one who lost everything to finally find himself. Mauricio opened the paper and read, "I never told you, but I always knew I had a brother. Mom didn't say much, but when she stared out the window, it was you she talked about. Even without saying your name, I hated you. Then I understood you. And today, I love you. You didn't become my hero when you gave your name to a building. You became my hero when you took my nephew in your arms and ran with him in the rain, fleeing fear. That night, you carried more than Lucas. You carried our whole world. Thank you, Brother Raphael. Mauricio cried. He sat on the floor, legs crossed, the letter on his lap. Lucas walked in, holding half a piece of bread. Are you crying, Dad? Yes, but it's from joy, son. Then that's okay. Can I sit? Come. Lucas sat next to him. He tore a piece of bread and offered it to his father. Sharing, that's what Uncle Rafa says. If we share, it never runs out. Mauricio took the piece, ate in silence, and thought. The bread, the letter, the name. He no longer had a company, no more armored car, no foreign apartment. But he had a brother, a son, a purpose, and sometimes that's all you need. There are stories that end with a period, but there are others that, when they seem to be ending, are actually just beginning. 1 year later, the Rafael Vasconcelos Foundation had become a national reference. Children had been reintegrated into families. Others had become artists, students, citizens. Mauricio had been invited to conferences, interviews, documentaries, but he only accepted those where he could bring Lucas. My best speech is him. He would say. Rafael, now recovered, had reopened an old dream, a small music school. In a side room of the center. He taught children to play drums, guitar, to compose, and sometimes to be quiet and listen. Lucas, meanwhile, had written a book. Yes, a book. With the help of a volunteer teacher, he told his story from a child's point of view. The title, The Bread, the Rag, and the Millionaire. He said the bread represented what he shared, the rag, what he was wearing when he was found, and the millionaire, what he discovered his father was not, but what he could still become. The book became a success, and all profits were donated to the foundation. One day, during a conference, a child in the audience asked, Mr. Mauricio, are you rich again? He smiled, reflected, and answered, my son looks at me and calls me Dad with pride. My brother calls me brother with no resentment, and I sleep peacefully without golden locks. He leaned forward, looked the child in the eyes. Tell me, little one, do you know of any greater wealth than that? The boy smiled, and the entire auditorium rose to applaud, because some men lose everything to gain what has no price. And sometimes it takes a missing child for a father to find himself. The end.